Good evening, you're watching the main news on ATV. I'm HEYLING Chan.
And I'm BRITTYN CLENNETT. Here are tonight's top stories.
Wang Guangya denies Beijing is tightening grip on Hong Kong by laying out conditions for next chief executive.
More dockers join strike at YEUNG container terminal, but 100 others decide to return to work.
North Korea says it's entering a state of war with South Korea after putting missile units on standby. A senior mainland official has denied that Beijing is tightening its grip on Hong Kong by laying out conditions for the next chief executive.
Wang Guangya tried to allay fears after another mainland official said Beijing will not accept anyone who's antagonistic towards the central government to lead Hong Kong. ATV's Emily Sue reports.
NPC Law Committee Chairman YEUNG triggered a storm of controversy after he said last week that candidates in the 2017 chief executive election must love China and Hong Kong and must not antagonize Beijing. Democracy activists interpreted the comments made during Chow's meeting with pro-establishment lawmakers in Shenzhen last Sunday as a warning that anyone who doesn't see eye to eye with Beijing will be barred from running in the 2017 poll. Also present at the Shenzhen meeting was the director of the State Council's Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office, Wang Guangya. His statements at the session weren't made public until today, when they were published by his office. Wang denied that Beijing is tightening its rein on Hong Kong by imposing requirements for the election, which China has promised will be based on universal suffrage. He said he knows some Hong Kong people are worried because they feel Beijing has been placing more emphasis on the one country part of the one country, two systems principle since China's new leaders took over earlier this month. But Wang stressed the formula is an unswerving principle. He said implementing the principle fully will safeguard China's sovereignty and security, while at the same time ensuring Hong Kong's prosperity and stability. After last week's meeting, Wang referred to the Occupy Central movement, which plans to stage a civil disobedience campaign in the business district in July next year if the Hong Kong government's political reform blueprint falls short of public expectations. The Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office chief had warned that Hong Kong people don't want to see the city messed up by Occupy Central. The issue was taken further yesterday when the state-run Global Times cautioned in an editorial that pan-democrats should not make a misjudgment by challenging Beijing on the streets of Central, hinting this could amount to economic suicide. Today, the man behind Occupy Central, Hong Kong University law professor Benny Tai, defended his stance, saying his group is targeting what he calls unjust laws. This follows concerns that Beijing will screen candidates in the next chief executive election. Tai said his plan is to show Beijing that Hong Kong is mature enough to press for democracy in a calm and rational manner. He said he doesn't want the central government to misinterpret his intentions, adding that blocking roads in Central will only go ahead as a last resort. Meanwhile, the Professional Teachers Union today uploaded relevant teaching materials about the Occupy Central movement on its website. This will enable general studies teachers to initiate discussions with their students. Speaking on a radio program, Education Secretary Eddie Ng appeared receptive to the idea. He said Hong Kong is a diversified and open society with core values, and students should develop their own values through discussions with teachers acting as their guide. Ng noted that students probably know about Occupy Central through news and other channels already, so it'll be helpful to have teachers assist them analyze the movement from different perspectives so they can make their own judgment. Ng was asked whether teachers will be held accountable if they take students to events organized by the movement. He said he respects all forms of expression so long as people abide by the law and do not disturb public order. Emily Sue, ATV News.
The strike for more pay by dock workers at the YEUNG container terminal has grown, with more than 300 now refusing to work.
But around 100 other dockers have returned to work, prompting unions to raise concerns that they may be targeted by those who are still on strike. ATV's Bo Leung reports.
For the third day in a row, dockers and their supporters rallied at Pier 6 of the YEUNG container terminal to press demands for higher pay. More disgruntled workers joined the strike today, taking the number who downed tools to over 350. But around 100 other dockers who were on strike for the past 2 days returned to work today. Unions believe they were pressured into abandoning the industrial action. Fearing that they may be targeted by co-workers, unionists appealed for calm and urged those on strike to be understanding and not turn against their colleagues. Labour Party lawmaker and head of the Confederation of Trade Unions, Lee Chuk-yan, claimed that all the workers are being mistreated. He called on operator Hong Kong International Terminals to take responsibility for the employees. But HIT said it has nothing to do with the dispute, claiming that the pay row is between contractors hired by the terminal operator and the dockers. Unions are demanding to be included in negotiations between contractors and workers. But the contractors told the unionists to stay away. The strikers are unhappy with the proposed 5% pay increase and are calling for a 17% rise. They say their salaries have been unable to keep up with inflation, and as a result they are having trouble making ends meet. Meanwhile, HIT Managing Director Jerry Yim says the port is a dangerous area to protest in, and the protesting workers shouldn't stay there much longer. Yim said he understands their demands, but the protest should be done safely, and he hopes the strikers will cooperate. The stoppage has affected container port operations slightly, but measures are in place to ensure that services continue. The strike began on Thursday when 200 workers walked off their jobs. At the start of their industrial action, a scuffle broke out between security staff and dockers. The guards were trying to stop the protesters from breaking into Pier 6. 5 security guards were injured during the clash. Bo-leung, ATV News.
The review of the MTRC's fare adjustment mechanism might take longer than expected, according to experts.
The rail company plans to raise fares by 3.2% if a new agreement isn't reached by June. Bo-leung reports.
The government and the city's sole railway operator are still locked in talks over a revised fare adjustment mechanism. But if no deal is reached by June, passengers can expect to pay 3.2% more to travel on the MTR. A review of the fare adjustment formula was launched in August last year in the wake of a public outcry after fares rose by 5.4%, despite the MTRC making a net profit of $14.7 billion in 2011. Under the current fare adjustment mechanism, the railway company fare adjustments are based on inflation and transport workers' wages. The government is seeking a new formula that includes public affordability and the firm's profits. During a radio show this morning, Polytechnic University engineering lecturer Hung Wing-tat said the MTRC needs to invest heavily on maintenance and safety. This means raising fares to sustain costs. Hung also feels the pay packages of railway staff should not be lowered to offset other costs. The academic believes it will take longer to discuss a new fare mechanism because of sensitive information over the MTRC's expenditure. A spokesman for the Coalition to Monitor Public Transport and Utilities, Richard Choi, expressed concern that with time running out, the government and the MTRC won't be able to reach an agreement, and so fares will go up. Lawmaker Wong Kwok-hing of the Federation of Trade Unions said the MTR shouldn't charge more until a new fare adjustment mechanism is set. Bo-leung, ATV News.
Rescuers in Tibet have found the first body in a search for 83 miners buried under a landslide yesterday.
The rescue is continuing, but officials are holding out little hope of finding any survivors because of adverse weather conditions and the large amounts of debris. Emily Sue reports.
Thousands of tons of rock swept away a miners' camp near the Tibetan capital Lhasa yesterday morning. The miners were asleep when the landslide struck. Rescuers rushed to the scene 70 kilometers east of Lhasa and launched a round-the-clock search. The hunt continued today, but the hilly terrain, rubble and freezing weather are hampering the search. Further minor landslides also hindered their efforts. More than 2,000 people are involved and 200 large vehicles were deployed. Sniffer dogs prowled the hillside, but temperatures as low as -3 degrees affected their sensing ability. Rescuers are also using light detector machines in the frantic hunt for survivors. President Xi Jinping, who's touring Africa, and Premier Li Keqiang ordered that everything be done to try and save the miners. But despite the massive effort, officials are pessimistic. The landslide covered a 4-kilometer area at an altitude of 4,600 meters. Many rescuers complained of slight altitude sickness. The mine, which produces copper, is a subsidiary of state-owned China National Gold Group. All the workers were migrant, ethnic Han Chinese from neighboring provinces, except for 2 Tibetans. Emily Su, ATV News.
North Korea says it's entering a state of war with rival South Korea, but Seoul has brushed off the warning as another empty threat.
This comes a day after Pyongyang put its missiles on standby to target U.S. military bases in the region. North Korean state media was at it again today, making an announcement about its rival South Korea that escalated regional tensions. North-South relations will be entering a state of war, and all issues raised between the North and South will be handled accordingly, said a newsreader. The state of neither peace nor war has ended on the Korean peninsula. That's a reference to the past 6 decades, when the 2 Koreas have technically been at war under an armistice that ended a conflict between them in 1953. But Seoul has brushed off today's announcement as empty rhetoric. North Korea's continuing threats against South Korea, such as saying it is entering a state of war, are never acceptable since they harm peace and stability on the Korean peninsula, said Defense Ministry spokesman Kim Min-sok. Seoul has also made it clear that there are no signs of unusual activity in the North's military to suggest aggression. Pyongyang said today that it'll respond without mercy to any action by Seoul that harms its sovereignty, in what analysts say was a sign that North Korea isn't about to mount a preemptive strike. The rhetoric comes a day after the reclusive nation put its missile units on standby to attack U.S. military bases in South Korea and the Pacific, something which state media claims is supported by thousands of people rallying in central Pyongyang. The move came after 2 American stealth bombers flew over the Korean peninsula earlier this week in a practice run. Their deployment was part of annual military drills South Korea holds with the U.S. Seoul claims the use of bombers is not a threat of attack. Our recent military exercises, such as Key Resolve and Fall Eagle, and the U.S. strategic bombers' deployment on the peninsula, are defensive in nature against North Korea's possible provocations, Kim said. The escalating tensions in the region are thought to be attempts by North Korean leader Kim Jong-un to boost his domestic and international standing. He was shown on state television yesterday holding an emergency meeting with top military officials, at which he ordered the missile units to be put on standby. Analysts have taken note of the fact that Kim is seen in the pictures to be using U.S. tech giant Apple's iMac computer. Still to come on ATV's main news tonight, Xi Jinping ends tour of Africa in Republic of Congo by signing several deals.
Building collapses in Dar es Salaam, killing at least 17 people with dozens missing.
People say responsibility, they say priority. With faith, they were the true heroes. After the towers fell, tonight at 9. Singing sensation Francis Yip teamed up with the Hong Kong Philharmonic Orchestra to give you the most unforgettable performance ever. So many classic Cantonese pop songs that will once again melt your heart. Enjoy the special holiday with HKPO and Francis Yip Diva, Wednesday night at 9.
無邊無際，無窮無盡，無憂無慮，無牽無掛，回歸自然，轉化新生，讓生命嘅美好回憶透過紀念網站歷久常新，講出你嘅選擇，讓家人達成你嘅心願。
They can drive you nuts. From the most powerful roaring on Earth to the sexiest bodies you will ever see. They're surely every man's dream. Drive It, every Monday evening at 6:55.
Reports directly from the heart of Europe. Every week, business insiders and analysts keep you at the forefront of current economic developments. Check in current news, made in Germany. Tonight at 8.
A man suffering from respiratory symptoms has been found not to be infected with a SARS-like virus that's killed 11 people in Europe and the Middle East.
The victim is in stable condition in hospital as health officials vowed to stay alert against the new virus.
The Centre for Health Protection was notified last night after a 55-year-old man was admitted to United Christian Hospital in Kwantong with fever and respiratory symptoms. Tests were carried out today and the man, who recently travelled to Italy with a stopover in Dubai, was found not to have been infected by the SARS-like novel coronavirus. He remains in stable condition while his wife, who travelled with him, did not develop any symptoms. The centre said measures are in place at hospitals and border checkpoints to stop any suspected cases of the virus, adding that no one in the city has been infected so far. Health authorities have been on high alert for the novel coronavirus, which was first detected in the Middle East in September. Since then, 17 people are known to have contracted the virus in Europe and the Middle East, and 11 have died. After the trauma of the SARS crisis in 2003, Hong Kong is nervous about new outbreaks. SARS killed 299 people in the city. Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying marked the 10th anniversary of the tragedy by hoping that there won't be a recurrence. Speaking on a pre-recorded radio program, he said the perseverance and bravery that medical staff displayed during the outbreak touched countless numbers of people. Leung, who was then Executive Council convener, visited Amoy Gardens in Kowloon Bay, one of the worst hit areas in Hong Kong. We mustn't give up the spirit of unity and selflessness, no matter how much has changed over the years, he said. Leung, who's had a stormy ride since taking office 9 months ago, admitted there are many chronic social issues which have not yet been resolved, but said the city can overcome any challenge if it stays united.
Overseas, President Xi Jinping has wrapped up his tour of Africa in the Republic of Congo, ending the visit by signing a series of bilateral deals.
This comes as the Central African Republic's new president said that he will review the country's mining and oil contracts with China signed under the previous government. President Xi Jinping spent the last of his 6-day tour of Africa in the Republic of Congo, where he held talks with his counterpart Denis Sassou Nguesso. China's new leader signed several bilateral agreements with the country for economic cooperation and collaboration on infrastructure projects. That includes a deal under which Beijing will finance the construction of a $63 million river port. China also agreed to nearly $30 billion worth of grants and zero-interest loans to the Republic of Congo. Xi then left the continent after having outlined his African policy as a partnership with various nations. He had earlier told Africa that its mutual reliance with China was crucial to their success. But that success may be more difficult to come by, as the Central African Republic's new president, Michel Djotoja, said that he will review the country's mining and oil contracts signed with China. The deals made under the previous government that's now been toppled will be reconsidered to see if they've been badly done. Djotoja's comments mark a departure in policy from his predecessors. The new leader took power last week in a coup that's been internationally condemned. In other world news making the headlines, former South African President Nelson Mandela is making steady progress as he recovers in hospital from a lung infection.
But we begin in Tanzania, where a building has collapsed, killing at least 17 people and trapping dozens.
Rescue workers begin a frantic search for survivors soon after a multi-storey building under construction toppled in the Tanzanian capital. 13 people were pulled out from the ruins of the structure in Dar es Salaam. But 4 dozen people, mostly workers, are believed to be trapped under the rubble. Police are questioning several people linked to a construction company. Former South African President Nelson Mandela, who's suffering from a lung infection, is reported to be making steady progress. The 94-year-old has spent a second day in hospital.
Former President Nelson Mandela is in good spirits. The doctors report that he is making steady progress.
The news delighted supporters of the former freedom fighter.
It's great news for the country. I mean, he's our biggest brand, our biggest statesman. We wouldn't want to lose him now. I believe there's still a lot that he has to witness South Africa achieve.
It's the third time in 4 months that the country's first black president has gone to hospital for lung infection treatment. Fierce clashes have erupted across Egypt between supporters and opponents of the government. The heaviest street battles took place in the northern city of Alexandria. Several people were injured as supporters of President Mohamed Morsi fought with government opponents. One man was seen firing a homemade pistol during the confrontation. The unrest comes amid growing dissatisfaction with the performance of the Egyptian government. Emergency services in Latvia have gone to the rescue of more than 220 people trapped on ice floes in the Gulf of Riga. Boats and helicopters were used to take the victims, mainly fishermen, to safety. They were just 300 metres from shore when the rescue began, but the ice floes moved so quickly that the gap had widened to 4 kilometres at the end of the 3-hour operation.
It's time for sports with Raymond Young.
And Andy Murray is closer to an upgrade.
Well, he's on course to become world number 2. The Scotsman defeated Richard Gasquet to set up a showdown with third seed David Ferrer in the Miami Masters final. The stakes are high for Andy Murray at the Miami Masters in Florida. Lifting the title would make him the world number 2. He moved a step closer to his dream after beating Frenchman Richard Gasquet in the semi-finals. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Murray had a stumbling start, double faulting on breakpoint before losing the set 6-7. However, he was able to compose himself and return to court stronger in the second set, winning it 6-1. Murray wrapped up victory in the third set 6-2 to set up a clash with Spaniard third seed David Ferrer in the final.
And David's a great player, he's an unbelievable athlete. You know, he gets a lot of balls. You know, he's got one of the best attitudes on the tour, so it's for sure going to be a tough match. It'll just depend who plays better on the day.
Ferrer earned his ticket to the final by beating German Tommy Haas. The Spaniard took a while to get up the starting blocks, but encountered few problems after the beginning of the second set, racing to a 4-6, 6-2, 6-3 victory. Ferrer said he's expecting a tough match against Murray. Andy is a player with a lot of talent, a player who moves very well. He's among the fastest in existence, Ferrer said. I will have to play very aggressively, especially with my forehand aiming the ball well and having a good percentage on my serve. If Murray takes the Miami crown, he'll oust Roger Federer from the world number 2 ranking. Also in sports, starting with some positive news for New Zealand cricket fans. Batsman Jesse Ryder is recovering slowly from an attack in Christchurch earlier this week. New Zealand batsman Jesse Ryder has regained consciousness and has begun the slow road to recovery. But at this stage, he doesn't remember the brutal assault that landed him in critical condition in hospital. The 28-year-old was severely beaten up outside a bar and fast food restaurant and suffered a fractured skull and collapsed lung.
Jesse's condition has improved to the extent that he's now out of the induced coma and off the ventilator. Jesse is awake and talking to us, but he's obviously still working through the immediate effects of being in the coma and the drugs that the medical team have been using. Naturally, we are absolutely thrilled with progress.
2 men have been charged with assault and are due to appear in court next week.
Grizzlies actually at home.
In the NBA, the Memphis Grizzlies defeated the Houston Rockets 103-94.
Parsons on a curl, the pitch out, Motiejunas for 3.
Marc Gasol and Zach Randolph led the charge, with both scoring 21 points.
For the Rockets, down 3.
Taiwanese-American star Jeremy Lin disappointed his Houston fans, managing to notch up just 8 points.
After the timeout.
The world's fastest man, Usain Bolt, is getting his legs into gear and testing out the track ahead of an exhibition race on the beach in Rio de Janeiro to promote the 2016 Olympics.
It's good, it felt good. Bouncing everything, and it felt smooth, so that's good. It's negative 2.0 wind, but hopefully in the morning there won't be any wind, but I'm looking forward to it, definitely.
The 6-time Olympic champion will compete against 3 other sprinters. A look at the weather before we leave you. Today was cloudy to overcast with occasional rain and squally thunderstorms. Temperatures range from 17.8 to 19.6 degrees, while the relative humidity was between 88 and 99%. Winds were fresh easterly, strong offshore and on high ground, gusty at times. Looking at the ultraviolet reading, the maximum recorded for the day was 1. Tomorrow's UV index will be around 3. Let's take a look at the weather in the region. A trough of low pressure continues to bring unsettled weather to Guangdong and its adjacent waters. Meanwhile, the northeast monsoon persists over the coast of southeastern China. And moving on to the satellite images. A broad cloud band is covering South China's coastal areas. Here's what we can expect over the next few days. Cloudy to overcast with rain and thunderstorms tomorrow. Expect downpours at first. Temperatures will range from 18 to 21 degrees. The wet weather will ease off on Easter Monday, which will remain cloudy with mist. Temperatures between 19 and 22 degrees, staying cloudy with rain throughout next week. Now for tomorrow's air pollution levels. General stations will be low to medium at 25 to 50. Roadside pollution levels will be medium to high at 50 to 85. Finally, the weather in other cities around the world.
That's the main news for